And I'm happy to introduce you to Daniel, who will take you through the presentation today and who knows a lot more about the topic than I do. So enjoy the session today, and after the session, we will go into the questions that you can put into the chat, which you will find on the right-hand side of your screen. So please, if you have any questions, just put them in there, and we'll get back to that at the end of the session, which will be in about 40-45 minutes. Enjoy. Daniel, up to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. And first of all, thanks for the introduction, Peter. So what we're going to cover in the next 30 minutes is the following. So first of all, we'll be looking into an introduction on custom bidding. What is it exactly, what it entails, and how do you start working with it? Some of the key benefits to using this relatively new feature in DV360. We'll be looking at some of the potentially relevant use cases for you and potentially your client if you're an agency. How you set up for activation in DV360, and we'll look into some of the best practices that we can share with you already, and look into once you activate things, how you can measure effectiveness. And in the end, we'll have some time to go through all the questions that you put in the chat. So feel free to drop them in as we go, because we are going to go through each one of them. So, as said, first of all, we'll be looking into an introduction to custom bidding in DV360. So, first of all, what is it exactly? So, when we're looking at custom bidding, it basically means that users can now take control over their optimization algorithm by feeding it the data that represents their relevant KPIs. Meaning that it will be, you're looking into leveraging your insights, so your conversion data, like transactions or transaction value or customer value data based on their site interactions that you are able to capture, for example, by custom floodlight variables, for example. Combining that with Google's machine learning, you're able to use over 40 different signals, including auction dynamics and the probability to convert, allowing you to optimize towards the best value for your spend. How does it work? So when we're looking into DV360, before you actually get to the work of using this custom bidding script, this custom algorithm, first of all, you'll be drafting your script, your piece of script, which is essentially a Python script. And this tells DV360 how to score each impression. And the score represents how valuable the outcome of this impression is to you. Once that is determined, and you input that into the DV360 UI, this algorithm starts learning from the scoring. So the algorithm learns which impressions are valuable and feeds that data back into the bidding model to understand which impressions will be valuable to you in the future. And then finally, once you have this algorithm set up and there's already some learnings collected there, you can start using this custom algorithm for bidding on impressions. So when DV360 sees a new impression, it uses the data from the model to predict the value of the impression and determines what to bid. And now we'll be looking in the setup in DV360. I've made this visualization for you so that it's clear how you go about it. First of all, you identify your KPI and the key parameters that are relevant for you. Once you start designing your custom script, you're going to need those being translated in there. So as said, it's based on a Python. It's a Python script. So I've put in an example here at the bottom, which is if it's interesting to optimize towards a return on ad spend, for example. And once that's designed, you're going to upload that script into the DV360 UI. Once you've done that, the custom algorithm, as said in the previous slide, is going to start learning from the scoring. So that's the machine learning. That's the machine actually learning from the historic data. And then once you start activating this custom algorithm, the machine is also going to bid for impressions, and those results are going to be fed back into the system. So you're able to also report on what happened on your campaign. And for example, when you're going to test, when you're going to set up an experiment and test a control IO against an IO on which you use a custom bidding script, this is really useful to look into. Now let's look at some of the key benefits, because for those out there who've been using the platform DV360 for a while, I'm sure are familiar with fixed bidding and also automated bidding, which has been around for quite a while. But obviously this new feature is different. And how is it any different? So first of all, you can now leverage your business insights and have your campaigns optimized based on an actual value of each conversion. So it no longer looks at like a flat value for each conversion, for each floodlight conversion, for example, that you have. So things are not treated equally. Instead, you have the freedom to play around with, for example, things like adding a weight to a certain conversion, which we'll be looking at later on in this presentation. But you have the freedom to automatically hit spend targets while optimizing for the highest possible return on ad spend. And you'll be able to customize your conversion goal and obviously leave the rest to Google's machine learning. Now let's look at some of the use cases, because I can imagine all this is nice, but we obviously want to put this into practice. So what I've done is I've illustrated a couple of use cases here for taking more control over your data. That doesn't mean that you are tied to these. These are obviously for inspiration. You can expand these even further by, for example, adding additional key parameters. But hopefully it will give you some inspiration to get to work with this exciting new feature. So first of all, I had introduced it a little bit already, which is the weighted conversions. So as said, if you look at, for example, floodlight conversions or GA goals, conversions shouldn't be treated equally. Instead, with weighted conversions, you can assign a particular value to each one of them. So imagine, and we'll be looking at an example in a bit, but imagine, for example, a newsletter sign up is still relevant conversion, but it's less relevant than, for example, become someone that converts, that purchases an actual product from your site. The next one is customer value. Think of, so this is based on custom values that are passed through in Floodlights that we call custom Floodlight variables. Now think of, for example, a basket size. When people on your site, in the example, if you have an e-commerce website, for example, people that put your most expensive product in their basket, this is actually the group that you want the algorithm to optimize towards, because this is going to give you the highest return on ad spend, right? So really relevant. And for GA goals, in this case, think of time on site, pages visited, so on. The next one is transaction, so return on ad spend. I think personally this is a really good update, because in the past optimizing on return on ad spend was not something that you were able to do in the platform, even though this ROAS optimization has been available in, for example, a tool like Google Ads. So I think this is a great update, and this also allows you to optimize your performance campaigns more effectively. Last but not least is the brand feature. Obviously, for those out there running a lot of branding campaigns, you can now have your custom algorithm optimized based on metrics that highly correlate with brand awareness and lift. So think of any creative dimensions, ad position, viewability, audibility, video complete, you name it. You can add all those into the things that matter for your branding campaigns. So which data sources can you use? Just to get back to the point, because some things have already been mentioned, but it's good to determine which data you have available. So first of all, it's Floodlight data. Obviously either from Campaign Manager or DV360. GA360 goals. So for those out there who have the premium version of GA, and impression level data. So in this case, impression level data is relevant for the last example on the previous slide, so for branding campaigns in which you are looking into things like viewability, audibility, so on. So the first use case. So I mentioned just now that when you're looking into weighted conversions, that all conversions shouldn't be treated equally. So what you can do now is apply a score that is relevant for you. So in this example, if we're looking at a newsletter sign up, it's still a relevant conversion, but it's less relevant than a purchase. So we're giving it a score 1. So in this case, the signing up for a trial account, we're giving it a score 2. And as we are moving towards that, well, basically end goal, we are also increasing the score that we're applying here. The next one is optimizing using GA goals. So as said, for those out there who are using DV360, so the premium version of GA, you can use your the different GA goals to leverage that for custom bidding in DV360. So allowing you to optimize based on GA data. This could be pages per session, and in this case, on-site video play, a click on a promotion. So users in this case are scored based on the sum of different GA goals. And the last one I wanted to show you is optimizing using impression level data. So as said, for any branding campaign out there, that you're going to run, this uses signals for the impression to calculate a proxy brand KPI to optimize towards. So in this case, viewability and video completes. So this script favors video completes and viewability measured with active view in DV360. So once, as mentioned in one of the previous slides, that if, for example, ad position, device type, or environment is relevant for you, you can also elaborate on the script by adding additional key parameters to steer towards. So how does this work when you start diving into setup for activation in DV360? First of all, you create a custom Python script. You upload the script in the UI editor. You start sampling your script in the UI sampler, and we're gonna dive into what it exactly means to sample a script. Choose the algorithm as the bid strategy in the line item as the last step, which is actually the activation. First of all, for those who are not familiar with where to find custom bidding within the DV360 UI, you can find it in the left main menu under your DV360 partner. So once you click to create a new algorithm, you can assign it directly to an existing advertiser account. So you are able to activate that later under any relevant insertion order or line item within that advertiser account. The next step is to obviously upload the script in the UI editor. So what you're doing in this step is checking if, first of all, if the syntax is valid. Once you choose an advertiser to test your script against, note that for any successful testing, this advertiser must have the Floodlight set up in case you're referencing it. So in case you're using any particular Floodlight ID in your script sample. Then you're going to sample your script. So what this means is basically you're checking for errors and checking if, based on historic performance of floodlights that have already existed in the past, if there are sufficient positive impressions. If this is all good, let's assume everything's fine. You then go into the either insertion order or line item level targeting and switch your current bidding settings for your new custom bidding script. So first of all, what's really crucial to understand is that you need to verify you have at least 1,000 positive values at advertiser level, meaning that you need to have positive floodlight impressions at advertiser level. So if you are leveraging, for example, particular conversions and you're only seeing, for example, 12 positive values in the last 30 days, that means that you're not meeting a particular threshold that you need for this custom bidding algorithm to work successfully. So next one is that the sum of the value divided by the sum of the cost must be in the range of 0.001 and 1,000. Value should be greater than or equal to 0. and double check, obviously, if there are no incoming errors in the meantime. So definitely good to keep monitoring that once you set up things in under your partner. Then we'll be looking into some of the best practices that we can already share. As even though it's still quite a new feature, we've been gathering already some insights, and also we're lucky to have some insights from our friends at Google. We are gladly able to share these with you. So first of all, for the setup. Rule of thumb is to run for a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks with at least €300 spent a day to get enough data. This doesn't mean that, imagine if you're using any particular conversion and you're getting, for example, only 10 conversions in the last 30 days. That still means that you would need to meet the thresholds that you would regularly have when you're using automated bidding. This same principle, the same idea applies actually to custom bidding. You need plenty of data. So imagine at least like 100 conversions over the last 30 days to keep feeding that back into the model. So it has to stay fresh and up to date. We recommend once you start going into this is to set up an IO with custom algorithm and an IO without it, so that you can run under the experiments tab in DV360 an actual test. So for cleaner measurement and for comparison. Automated bidding works best at insertion order level instead of line item level. The reason for that is that you can manage at insertion order level the bidding from the line items that sit underneath it. The last point in the setup is don't overcomplicate your script. So keep it to the point. If anything, set up different scripts if you want to test different things and start doing the same experiment that I mentioned. For making changes, so imagine once you have anything alive, it's not recommended to make any big changes that references back to any floodlight or GA goal during the campaign activity. So imagine, for example, switching an ID of a floodlight or an ID of a GA goal to a different one, because this can obviously mess up your custom algorithm. Instead, we recommend to create a new script if needed, and also set up a different IO to run a separate test. What you can do is actually update the weightings or the scores, so to say, in the script, and make small incremental changes as you go. So in case you wish to switch to a target value cost bid, which you can do obviously at both line item and insertion order level. Bear in mind that for any automated bidding that you would also do is think of a realistic bid goal, right? So based on your historic performance, imagine if previously, before all this, you were setting a target CPA bid and your historic performance was showing that you've been getting €30 CPA over the last 30 days. Setting a target goal at €10 CPA is, in this example, not realistic. So have a close look at your data over the last month, and set a realistic target. So first of all, we always recommend to use the while spending full budget setting until you have gathered enough data. So for those who are interested in setting a target bid, we say that you need at least a month's data before you start activating any target bid. So for tracking conversions, in case you have a long conversion cycle, consider using higher funnel events, meaning that, for example, if you're looking at things that are lower in the funnel you might be considering also product page views, because the reason for that is the algorithm only looks at floodlight impressions over the last 30 days. So keep that in mind. Then once things are live, some of the things that are good to keep in mind is how are you going to evaluate performance? What are the things that you're going to pay attention to? First of all, I think what is also key here is that usually for a performance campaign, you would be looking into your CPA performance, obviously. But as this is different, as you're looking into the value of impressions based on your script, it also introduces a new metric, which in this case is impression custom value divided by the cost. And for those out there who are familiar with DV360, cost in this case can also perceived as the revenue metric in the platform. So as said, it calculates the sum of impression values divided by the estimated total cost. For return on ad spend use cases, a higher CPA or CPM in the experiment is not an indicator that things went bad. It is an expected outcome, as well the system is buying more expensive potentially, but rather looking at higher value impressions, obviously depending on how you value your impressions. And for weighted conversions, if you have different conversions in there and you apply a score like we saw in one of the examples before, you may well choose to report on a CPA calculated against your highest weighted conversion, so the lowest in the sales funnel. And for monitoring performance, we recommend to do that on a weekly basis. So as spends and impressions, they regularly fluctuate on a daily basis, we recommend to evaluate performance between the test and the control IO on a weekly basis. And we say ignore the performance from the first week, because this is the training phase for the custom algorithm. So let the IOs and line items that are relevant to it run for at least 2 weeks without making any changes. So now we have some time to go through some of your questions, if any. So as said, feel free to drop in any questions here, and we're going to take the time to answer. Thanks for your attention.
It was interesting. Thank you very much, Daniel. We're through a little bit quicker than anticipated. No questions so far, so please feel free to enter if you have any. Not all at the same time. Daniel, what would be a question you would ask after you would have seen your presentation?
Wow, that's a good one. It's like questioning my own presentation. But yeah, what I would ask is, for example, let's see, how would you report on this particular performance? So once you start activating a custom bidding script, I think what's also good to add here is that you have, and we didn't dive into the reporting section obviously that deep, but it's good for those out there who have access to the DV360 platform, is that you can, from a standard report in DV360, you can select a template that's readily available for you, which is called custom bidding, so it's easy to find. And that will automatically already give you some predefined dimensions and metrics that of which Google knows that they're the ones that you should be looking at. So I think that's also a good one to add to that.
So maybe from my perspective, if I was an advertiser, and I would wonder, how much money would I at least need to spend to make it relevant for me to start thinking about features or using features like this? Is there a minimum?
So as mentioned in one of the slides, is that usually when we talk about in terms of spend, the rule of thumb is to have at least €300 budget per day. What you also should factor in is obviously the conversion data that you are getting. If the volumes are not low enough, are not high enough, then that also is not feeding enough data to the model for it to work successfully. So it goes hand in hand. So spend goes hand in hand with the data collection. So if, let's say, you're looking at conversion data from like lower in the funnel, but still you're a big e-com platform and you're getting enough traffic, you're getting enough users to fill basically the sales funnel, then that might as well work. But imagine if you're a platform and you're getting a lot of viewers to your product pages, but instead you're not getting a lot of people in the funnel stage, for example, because maybe there's quite a high threshold for people to move towards that. Consider, for example, conversion data or conversion events from higher up in the funnel. So you could also make a custom bidding algorithm work on people that have added something to their cart, people that have visited a product detail page, or that have used, for example, some kind of calculator tool. So any particular soft conversion that is relevant for you, you can also leverage that. So yeah, instead of, you don't have to reach for the stars immediately. You can also look at soft conversion data if you see that there's not enough data to feed the algorithm with.
Okay, understood. Thank you. In the meanwhile, we've got a question coming in. Question is: do I need knowledge on Python or scripts, or is DQ&A able to help me with this?
So that's a good question. Thanks for that. So first of all, DQ&A is definitely able to help and willing also. But what's also available and a good resource is that within the DV360 Help Center, if you have access to that already, there are some script samples. So meaning that a marketer can get started with this. You don't need any particular advanced knowledge of Python. There's plenty of resources out there, to get started, and also it's with the proper documentation. So therefore, making it easy to set things up and start running things. And as you go, you might find that you're gonna develop your knowledge on this and see if maybe it's interesting to add additional parameters to your script, making it more useful for your own case. But the thing is, there's plenty of resources out there. So yeah.
Cool. Can you still hear me, Daniel?
Yes.
Okay, my screen turned black all of a sudden. Another question coming in. Does the custom bidding algorithm look at all conversions over the lifetime, or does it look back for a certain time period or number of occurrences?
So imagine you have an advertiser that's been live for several months, for example, meaning also the floodlight activities have been live, and you've been running a campaign with those floodlight activities. It also looks at historic data. So that's, I think, very useful. For example, when you want to get started quite fast, you don't need to start completely from scratch. So there's already some historic data. And as said, it's the last 30 days.
Okay, and a follow-up question then from the same person is the algorithm bias for seasonality, is that incorporated?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The algorithm bias for seasonality. So, I mean, that depends on your own input, I suppose, no?
So as far as I understand, at least there's no documentation on it that's being factored in or taken into account.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think those were the questions we've gotten from the audience. Unless anybody has any other input, very welcome, Scarlett. Then we will keep it to that. So I hope you enjoyed this session. In 2 weeks, on the 1st of October, there will be another webinar which will address the search ad 360 versus Google Ads topic. So very welcome to join in. This webinar will also be in English and at 3 o'clock on the Thursday again. For now, I thank you very much. I wish you a great continuation of your day. Daniel, many thanks for your very interesting insights in this new feature. I'm sure there will be developments in the future as well, since this is such a dynamic topic. So I'm quite confident that we'll spend some more time in our sessions in the near future on this topic. Thank you again. Hope to see you, and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.